All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Friday Mastermind. For over 7 years, we've been doing this event. Usually we have Todd Bookspan, but he is abroad right now, traveling with his family, winning by noon, I'm sure, because he knows no other way. So I've got Deborah Bird now is going on 3 years. What's up, Deborah?
What's up? Happy Friday, everyone.
So you got to do both your role as social media expert and win by noon, take action. So you got
Starting to
to
feel like
do
this was
what you want.
Todd's strategy with getting me, in this group about three and a half years ago. This is for all of his travel. It's like I'm his substitute.
I don't think you're a substitute, but anyways, and Deb, you're gonna have you ever heard any of my interviews? Or are you familiar with Tina's backstory, our special guest today?
A little bit with just with Facebook and her involvement early days with that, but other than that, no. So I'm excited to learn on this call.
Cool. Well, I'll frame her and introduce her in a minute. We have Kristen Messerly joining us, the executive director of First Home IQ. What's up, Kristen?
What's up? Excited to be here.
Cool. Well, ask questions as you go. I think given how Tina rolls, there'll be a lot of opportunity to get ideas on how to connect with the next generation. So guys, our special guest, Tina Bellevue, is a top realtor. When I first met her, I don't know how many years ago was that, Tina? Was it
I
like
think it was 2015.
Okay, so wow. So
Yeah.
2015, she was a speaker at Sales Mastery. I think she was the only realtor who was speaking at Sales Mastery this year. Bill Hart had sent me a text saying, Dave, we have this realtor who's amazing. And anytime Bill Hart says someone's amazing, like, they're amazing. And would you kind of like take her under your wing and introduce her? And so I met her. She at the time was one of the very first people I ever interviewed or I ever met that was really making money with Facebook. Like at that point, there was a lot of busyness on social media, a lot of people using social media, and it was just busyness. But there wasn't a lot of people like doing business on using Facebook. And she had just the way she was using Facebook. I interviewed her probably 6 times over the next several years. Um, and then the other thing that I think really distinguishes her and why I invited her to this call and I wanted to bring it to everyone is she does a great job of what I just would call being a modern marketer. Like she uses social media in all the smart ways you can possibly use it, but she uses email, she uses CRM, and she really looks at the database of the CRM as one. And I still believe that most realtors and most mortgage people, it's like I got my marketing in my email database and my CRM, and then I do this over on Facebook and social. And there's not this like super integrated philosophy in how the two are used. And I just thought like, let's get Tina back into the community. So what's up, Tina?
Well, thank you for that lovely introduction. Yeah, it's funny. I'm really glad to be here. And you kind of had me reflecting on how much has evolved in that time when it was very Facebook centric, using my profile. And then there have been all these steps since then, launching a group for my past clients and advocates. And then I've got this other group that's like my digital geographic farm for creating more business and brand awareness in the niche that I really like to be in. And then I have so many different offshoots. So I'm curious, Dave, were you wanting to touch on the NAR kind of effect hanging over all of this today?
Well, I mean, I guarantee you that will be a question, but I really want, I mean, the community, the audience, what you
Yeah.
do. I do think you're an agent. So everyone, well, first of all, why don't you I know you, but why don't you tell everybody just so
Yeah.
they know your team, your practice, your model, what you do real quick.
Yeah. So I'll try to be brief. So I got into the industry 20 years ago as an executive assistant for an agent in my market and have really done a lot of different things in the industry. I was solo for many years, built my business to a solid level, working by referral and using what I respectfully call the old school Buffini type methods. And then in 2013, I decided to launch a team. And that's right before I met you, where I started to really focus on lead generation and listing lead generation. And Facebook, my profile was my primary tool for that. So built a team, small team, very high production. We got to about 50 million in sales volume at our peak year. And we're in the Baltimore market, so that's a lot of units compared to the California folk. And then in 2016, I was pretty burned out on the 7-day-a-week realtor schedule and took an opportunity to build a brokerage. So I did that for 3.5 years, worked with some really smart, driven people, recruited over 1,000 agents to our franchise as a team in that time. And ultimately, that wasn't for me long-term. It was too corporate. So at the end of 2019, heading right into COVID, I went back to running my team exclusively, which I had going behind the scenes while I was doing the brokerage work. And that's where I really reinvented a lot of what I think we'll talk about today, where I overhauled my leadership style, all of our marketing practices, because everything had gotten kind of tired and hadn't kept up with like the cutting edge of things you can do on the internet today compared to when I developed a lot of my systems back in like 2013. And I also decided to reform my team as a micro team with more focus on small handpicked people where we could all have a good lifestyle business versus running a really big team. Because as I grew my team to be larger, I found that it was more managerial and less entrepreneurial and creative. So my journey over the last 5 years has been really action-packed of making that happen, which there were some serious pain points and things that were tough in that time, but it's been the best thing I could have ever done for my quality of life. And during that time, I've had 2 children who are now 1 and 3, bought and launched my first Airbnb. And also my real love is coaching and teaching, which is why I love being on Zooms like this. So I've also got a course for agents. And because the thing about me is I make things, I make templates, I make systems, and I love spreading them instead of just making them for me and then letting them kind of go nowhere. So I'm going to show some of my better ideas as we talk through this, but that's just a little bit of my story.
Yeah, that's an incredible story. And Kristen, how much did you love that story? Because I could just, I know you pretty well, and I'm sure you can vibe. I like to make things
Yeah.
and spread them.
Yes, yeah, we've got kindred spirits, and I love to hear that you, are templatizing things and like to share that with others. So excited to get into some of that.
Yeah.
Cool.
I think
Well,
it's also important for people to just appreciate and thank you for sharing your journey and how you thought you wanted to build this massive 1,000 recruit, and then you self-discovered and explored that maybe this isn't what I want to do, and you had to pivot. And so I think that gives others who are listening permission for the same thing. And I think there's a lot of people kind of stuck in that place of trying to figure out what they want to be when they grow up, while being true to their core and their purpose and, making it work. So thank you for sharing all of those evolutions on your way.
And I'm glad you pointed that out, because I want to say 2 things about that. Like, number one, that part of my journey in making that transition was incredibly painful. A lot of people leaving, me leaving, not very bumpy ride. And I really had to lick my wounds for a while before I even felt like I could put myself out there again and find the energy to rebuild. And eventually I did. But I think, it's just, that's the stuff people don't talk about as much. And kind of paired with that, I just think that sometimes I'm just drawn to the idea that bigger is better. That's just how I'm wired. And then I found that isn't always what brings me joy. Yes, I can do it, but is that what really works for my life? And I think real estate's just so tricky with that, because it is such like a constant 7-day-a-week industry. And yes, we can have systems and boundaries and teams, but there are still realities to confront with that. And I just kind of had to learn that through experience. I wish I could just rewind some of those lessons. I don't really have regrets, but I think it's just hard when you're in those moments where you're like, I've built this thing, I've done this thing, and it doesn't feel the way I expected. Now what?
Mm-hmm.
And I love having that conversation with people.
Love it. So couple things, and I'll kind of frame how I think this conversation could be useful to our community. So anyone listening to this, whether you're on YouTube, whether you're in our group, like if you have questions, put them in. If she says something that you really thought was like, boom, like share that in comments so that we're all hearing the signals that you're getting, and we're all hearing the questions. And then, so Tina, let's think about where we're at in the market. We are literally a week from the NAR settlement coming, but rather than just start the conversation, hey, what do you think about NAR settlement? I mean, I do want to this mortgage community, I want them to be super valuable to agents going forward, helping agents make the transition, being valuable to agents going forward. We have some ideas around that, but why don't you tell us what you're doing and walk us through your model, and then where you're like, oh, and I'm making this change, or I'm not making this change. Like, speak to this change that's happening in the industry and how you're approaching winning in this market.
Yeah, I think that's a really important place to start because it's just the most critical thing right now. So the first thing, and I think anyone watching this who's actively interacting with realtors probably knows this to some degree, but maybe not the full level of what we're dealing with and what the conversations in my team have been. At least in Maryland, I know some states moved a little quicker on changing their MLS or changing the forms, but what we're dealing with is that we have 5 new forms in my state at the state level to use instead of, some are new, some are changed. And then there are also forms that I'm with EXP, and EXP has definitely been on the front leading edge of developing nationally approved forms. But what we're wading through is learning a lot. For better or for worse, I spend a lot of time on Facebook and in Facebook groups with realtors, but also a lot of consumer groups. And what's clear to me is that consumers are so confused, and so are agents. And I'm seeing many, many, many agents say things that are legally incorrect, liability. Like, a lot of people are having a lot of trouble comprehending the scope of what all of this means. So, and then what we're wading through just today is after watching webinars and trying to absorb all this information, I'm like, you know what? I'm realizing our brokerage is recommending we use our brokerage forms, not our state forms. We've spent the last few weeks really going deep on the state forms. So I say all of this to say that any of the top agents you're working with if they're concerned and really wanting to be prepared, which is generally how I like to be, that's what they're dealing with right now. So, so that's like the challenge. And even and our brokers are getting blown up with questions, and, so it's just like, it's a tough time. So that's sort of like the background of what successful agents who also are a little bit more conscious of liability are like, okay, like, I really need to absorb all of this. So there's that piece, which is just kind of a mess. And I'm just trusting that we'll work through that. I've been, putting a document together with all of my thoughts in one place, what I'm sure about, what I'm still not sure about. So that's kind of how I'm preparing with my small team. But sometimes I get my best inspiration when someone asks me a question. I don't know if any of you feel that way too, but I was talking with a colleague this week, and she was sharing her thoughts about how she's going to position herself with her value proposition on both sides, talking with buyers and sellers. And I said to her, if I think about what has made me successful for the last 20 years, sure, my systems have helped, my marketing has helped. I'm good at articulating my value, but what's really made me successful and got me off the ground is just who I am and leaning into that. And some of it sounds egotistical, but I was just saying to her, kind of like free flow, like, number one, I'm super smart, which means I can actually comprehend some things that some people are having trouble with. And I can lean into that and tap into that and articulate that. Another one of my skills is that I'm really good at explaining things to people in a way that they can understand, typically. I can be overly wordy at times too. So I work on that. But what I've found is that I've been able to educate people about what's going on better than a lot of other people. And that's something that's really going to set me and my team apart. And then the other thing that's made me successful is that I'm a community person. I'm a giver. I, have just been that person who thrives in a referral type business model because people trust me. They rely on me. They know I'm credible. So I say all of this to say, not to be like, look how great I am, but for kind of 2 angles for you to think about how you could be a resource to the agents you support to actually cut through the noise and know the forms and help them and guide them, especially people who are newer. I just said to a colleague right before we hopped on, like, such and such person is really struggling to get this. It's, I think, experience makes this trickier if you already didn't have a great grasp on forms and just understanding legality. And yes, we're not lawyers, but I feel like it's what I think about in the times where I have needed a lawyer in my business, where I want the best, sharpest, not necessarily the sharkiest type, but maybe, and someone who is just incisive and gets it. So I think anyone who has some of those traits and can communicate that can really set themselves apart. So whether you do that for your realtor partners or help them see that angle, for me, I'm like, no one can take me away. And I know I'll always find a way to monetize my brain and my value and my care about people. And I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but I can already see the breadcrumbs right now of my ability to just take complex things and help people understand them. And then that gives them that peace of mind that they're in the right hands. So I'll stop talking, but that's my first big piece.
Well, wow. I mean, first of all, we could spend the next day unpacking that. I mean, like, I hope everybody, like, I know I took a note. I communicate well and I make complex concepts simple. And I'm a community leader and I really care. And I do think that is going to win in every market in America, that value prop, and to actually be able to execute on that. Kristen, anything you want to pull out of what she just said, or any questions come to mind?
Yeah, I was just making notes about how you can be a resource to your agents. I love how you summarize that, Dave. And I would love to know, Tina, if there's anything that you have seen loan officers do to support you or agents in your community, or things that they're saying.
I'm
Or
pausing.
just
I
not
don't have a
doing.
great answer. Yeah. And I have some great lender partners. And I do feel like there's a major missing piece in providing any solutions to getting commissions paid for. And I know I know seller help is the answer, right? And that's just not viable always in a bidding war market, at least like ours. But I feel like there's a huge opportunity in the market to find a way to lend on the commission when you can't collateralize the house for it. And I don't see anyone talking about that. I've brought it up to some people and they're like, oh. So, and there may not be an answer, but I think like that inside the box thinking, I just actually stopped trying to go down that road with some of the lenders I spoke with, because it seemed like no one really had thoughts on that. So that's one thing. And I think, yeah.
I want, okay, before you go to the next thing, and I'll give you time to think about that next thing, I want to address, because I'm getting ahead of NAR. Like, part of my role in the industry and my role for both MortgageCoach and First Home IQ is to give the people that follow us, that use our technology, an advantage. And the way I do that is not that I'm the guy who comes up with all the ideas, but I interview people that are like winning, like who are the loan officers that are gaining market share in this market? Who are the loan officers that are, they're up 30% when the market's down? And one of the things, I'm going to actually show my screen and I'm going to see what you think, that I've seen as a trend. This was actually an interview I did with Jeremy Forcier. He's a top producer. I don't know if you've ever met Jeremy. He's in the Sonoma County market. But I'm hearing this all the time where they're showing options to the consumer. Because if the consumer doesn't, the worst thing you would want from a buyer is they're confused. Should I buy now or should I wait? Or how is this NAR settlement thing going to happen for me? So what Jeremy's doing and what a lot of people are doing is let's show the consumer, hey, maybe it's column A where the seller pays just like they always have, which, we think that's going to be the majority of the time. Maybe it's column B where, you'll have to adjust your down payment, but it will be financed into the transaction. Maybe we'll have to raise the purchase price if the seller doesn't pay it. And then maybe you just need to come in with more cash, like let's show you some options. And what we're hearing in the market is that the loan officers that are doing this, they're really helping, they're becoming a bigger part of your sales experience, not just pre-qualifying, but I want to help you deliver this educational experience to the consumer so that by the time they get to you, they're super excited about buying a home, despite the fact that rates are really high. Sometimes the loan officers in our community are showing, like, here's what your loan is today. Column 3 is, here's what you can refinance it into when rates come down. So that consumers like date the rate, buy the house.
Yep.
And then they understand the NAR option. So that when they come to you, they're super excited about buying, they're clear, and they're prepared to win in a multiple offer situation. So first of all, would you like it if you
Love
had a
it.
loan officer that delivered on that promise?
Yes, absolutely. And I feel like I know myself, when I need to make a big purchase, if I'm confused, I stop. I don't barrel forward. So having that kind of clarity, and it looked like it was, down payments in the 80s for the first three, or that worst case of 105. That's all people need to wrap their mind around, but they need to see it and hear it to understand it, or they cannot take action.
Well, I'm going to put a link to that interview with Jeremy. And I recommend to the loan officers you have that don't know these moves, you say, hey, here's a loan officer that's doing exactly what I want. Watch this and
Yeah.
tell me how you can do this. Or
Yeah.
tell me why you think what he's doing is not a great idea. So and anyone listening to this, guys, the takeaway when you go meet an agent and give this a sanity check here isn't to go like sell them on this strategy. It's like I would tell the loan officers, go to the realtor and go, hey, what would be your ideal for how your loan officer could best support you? Get some feedback. What percentage of the offers do you think they're going to be making blind and not knowing? By the way, what do you think that answer is? What is your answer to the percentage of offers a buyer agent's going to be making where they just don't know from a seller's perspective whether they're paying for the commission or not? What's your take?
I'm really not sure. So it's like a wild guess, but I feel like it could be 30 to 50% of the time if a lot of listing agents and sellers want to be cagey and just see what comes their way, which I think no one wants to talk about that, but it's going to happen a lot.
I think it's gonna start off 30 to 50, and I think it's gonna trend. Again, my opinion, just from who I've talked to, it's gonna trend towards the majority of time, it's gonna be blind because
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think a lot of realtors are in denial about that.
Yeah.
Because I'm seeing a lot of agents say things like, I'm going to make sure my sellers still offer buyer compensation. There's so much wrong with that statement. But I think a lot of people just are hoping to maintain the old system with just some tweaks. I've heard a lot of people say it's just different paperwork. And yeah, I disagree.
Yeah. Well, and by the way, I'm not saying that's the percent where the seller won't pay the buyer. Like I lean towards 70% of sellers are going to be, yeah, we'll pay the buyer agent. We're good. I just think when you're going to be making blind offers and the seller is going to be like, hey, make your best offer. Tell us what you want. We'll look at all of our considerations. We'll get back to you. I just think that is going to be the majority of how it's going to play, but we'll see. I don't know yet.
Yeah, I think so. The leadership of my company came out and said, absolutely, that's the best practice. Why would you show your hand and offer upfront if someone would never have needed it anyway?
I heard a rumor that it wasn't just a suggestion, it was a position, a mandate that EXP was going to take. Is that true?
Yeah, I think that's just a rumor. That's my understanding.
Okay. D Bird, any questions, thoughts, directions?
Well, so Tina, was that the first time you've seen from a mortgage coach example of essentially the 4 different outcomes of what could happen?
I've seen mortgage coach breakdowns before, just not as it applies to the commission in this way.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. So everyone who's listening right now, guys, we did a call, I want to say it was last week with Scott Nicholson, where he showed a lender marketing platform and he hit hard on the 5 different ways that we can help agents get paid in this market and had several examples, and even goes and explains how you set that up in a mortgage coach. So if that was super empowering just for you to see and bring clarity, which I don't know how else you could bring clarity to this conversation, showing all of those options side by side without the data in front of you. I just hope that this inspires a lot of mortgage professionals to be bold, be courageous, and start setting those meetings with big team leads or teams to help bring clarity to the noise and the chaos that's going on right now, because this is new. I mean, Tina,
and I just want to add, I mean, I'm a top agent in my market, and also good lenders know that I have access to other agents. I'm like a power referral source for a great lender. So I will say that I'm always amazed by what some lenders think is a good approach to get my attention versus, and I have a very specific kind of personality. It's not for everyone. However, I feel like I've gotten a lot of, I heard nothing from everyone, all the lenders that have me on their mailing list. There's crickets until rates dropped last week. And then suddenly it's like, oh, we're back. And I get it. Great. And I always want to know where rates are. I love to know what rates are every single day. That being said, I feel like I've not gotten one email with a subject line that says something like, here's how we're going to make sure we can finance your commission every time, and a breakdown. Like there's just been no messaging around that I can see. And yeah, maybe someone wants to call me and have coffee and talk about it. And I would do that with someone where it's definitely worth my time. But like, I think there's a real messaging miss. And seeing that one example where it's financed into the loan, and then it brings up all these questions for me of, how do you do that with FHA? How do you do that with all the people who have the lease cash? How are we going to help them? How's my team going to help all those first-time buyers win the bidding wars when we're still getting 10 offers on, starter townhomes in like certain parts of my suburbs? So those are the concerns that I have, just how to take care of our clients and not have them lose over and over, which is, terrible for countless reasons.
So anyone listening to this, guys, like pause the video, go back and listen to the last 3 minutes, like 3 times. That is how you win realtors in this market. I mean, she's in a major metro. She's a high profile agent, and she's telling you, I'm not hearing anything useful. I'm getting a lot of rate updates and status quo mortgage professional communication, and I'm not hearing this. By the way, I did a little PSA post on LinkedIn. I've heard on social media a lot of loan officers comparing the NAR settlement change for realtors to the Dodd-Frank change that we went through.
Yeah.
And my PSA was like, stop doing that. Like, 1, it's not about you. 2, they don't really know what you're talking about. And 3, when you're going through something tough, you want people to just say, hey, how can I help you? And you really don't want to hear about what they went through. Do you agree with me? Like, stop doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the only twist I would add to it is like, I would want to hear about that because it's, that all happened. What was that? What year was that? 2009?
2010.
10. Okay. So I was just a few years in the business then. And looking back, it wasn't my concern much, but did lenders just start making a lot less money per deal on average? And how did they, it's sort of like, what is the lesson?
Trust me, it was the best thing that ever happened to loan officers. And
Yeah.
so it's a little different. And by the way,
Yeah.
and in my last bullet point was, and it's not the same thing. It's not the same industry. It's, I haven't been able to think of how what loan officers went through with Dodd-Frank is going to help a realtor what you're going through. Like
that's been my question.
Yeah. And by the way, and even loan officers on here that want to like actually give me a sentence of how there's something that you did, other than it did end up being a really good thing for loan officers. I just don't think it's going to play out the same way. And there's not a lesson to be learned. So Krista, did you want to say something or ask something?
Oh, no, I was just thinking that it is a huge disruption and it is really scary. And so if there's empathy there and that you're not saying like, it's okay, it worked out for me, that kind of thing, then I don't know, I would see that as like trying to extend some empathy, but I'm not sure how you feel about that, Tina. So
I think like empathy and affirming is always a good thing. And then I'm also like, what am I going to do with it? I'm just busy. Like, what do you got for me? Not like what's in it for me, but that's kind of, I guess, because we're at this point where like, I have a lot on my plate. And now this like homework assignment, complex project of like assimilating all this information, wading through discrepancies between my state guidance and my brokerage guidance. Like it's a lot. So it is a time to not waste people's time.
So with that, Tina, what would you say would be the best way for a mortgage advisor to get your attention and to set a meeting to help educate you on these things? Because you probably do already have your go-to partners. You are really busy. I'm sure you get enough emails. Is it a phone call? Is it a DM? Like, what's the best way? What would catch your attention to make you say, okay, this is worth my time. I'm going to go visit.
Yeah, great question. I don't answer my phone much, which I know is a trope about realtors, but it's just true because it's 99% spam. If it's a number not in my phone already. So that being said, because I also don't do a lot of internet lead gen, it's like referral. So all that being said, anything else, and I do monitor I get so many leads in my DMs and my PMs. So I am really on top of those inboxes. So I think you have to know your audience, right? Like, where are they communicating? Where are they clearly active? And then the outreach needs to not be canned at all. And long before I'm going to agree to a meeting, I want to know what the point of it would be. So I feel like sharing some information, like something as simple as, I've been hearing from a lot of realtors that they haven't heard much about tool to ensure that commissions can be financed. Can I send you some information to look over? Do you want to chat? So I think some realtors are like that high I personality, and they're happy to like have a chit chat. And then you've got your high D or C types like me, who are like, what's the info? Let me figure out if that's worth looking into further. So I think you've got to know your audience a little bit. And generally you can figure that out by watching someone on social media and scrolling their stuff for a minute or two.
Weird. You can do that on social. What a
Guys,
concept.
another little nugget from a agent on how to connect. Show them that you know them, and address pain that they're likely happening, either macro industry pain, and even better, if you happen to know something very specific about them. Like, well, how cool would it be, Tina, if someone showed you they knowed you at a macro level, and they actually called out a specific property at the same time, like, hey, such and such, and I noticed that such and such has been on the market for 3 weeks, and I got an idea to make it more marketable. You got a few minutes to hear me out? Would that be interesting?
Yeah, specific, actionable, and tailored to me. Then I would maybe feel some affinity versus just being like, oh, there's just too much. I get it. Too many messages all day. I'm cherry picking what I can deal with.
Cool. Well, I know before we run out of time, I'm going to want to address, because you called it out, this is going to be a real challenge for first-time home buyers. And that's something heavy on Kristen's heart. Like, we want to get more 20-year-olds into home ownership. And, we want to talk about house hacking. We want to hear your thoughts as a top agent, how you help first-time home buyers, and how you, if there's house hacking ideas that you have. So I know that I want to do that before we run out of time, but I also know I want to just hear, like, how are you using social and database, and like, what is your marketing mix now? So what should we do first?
I feel like I just want to touch on the house hacking really quickly. I had a very instructive moment to me when I have one rental property, and it was my first house, and I kept it and bought the house that I'm in right now. And that was how I house hacked. Well, I guess house hacking could be also like roommates and all of that. And that's how I started getting my mortgage covered. I had a roommate. She paid more than 50% of my mortgage in my first house. And I did that. I was already in the industry. So I already had a lot of savvy and understanding of a lot of different things. I could drop a lease. I knew what to ask for rent. I didn't feel guilty asking someone to pay, a good chunk towards the mortgage. Like, so many things that made it possible for me to do that because of being in the industry. So I've had that house rented out for 12 years now, and I've had every tenant that has been there has turned into a buyer, just as a side note. And these current tenants let me know they want to buy with me next year when the lease expires. And they asked if I would sell the house to them. And I said, I will not sell it to you, and here's why. I put it on a 15-year mortgage during COVID. I'm 12 years away from this being fully paid off, and it's going to pay for one or both of my kids to go to college. So that's why I won't sell it to you. And I want you to know that you should do the same thing, and you should buy your first house and do everything you can to keep it. And she was like, what? Oh my gosh. And she was like, I can't wait to buy a house with you. But it's just conversations that most people just don't have access to unless they happen to have parents or mentors or thought leaders that are whispering in their ear. And even I had some people around me, and it was intimidating to me to imagine how to build a bigger rental portfolio. And that's one of my biggest regrets when I was active in the field, really making the most active commission money, that I didn't buy more rental properties, because it just felt confusing to me. And I think if I had someone nudge me and say, you know what, Tina, buy one more house and move again before you buy your like suburban house, I'd have another one right now. So we just have to tell people and take the time to explain why.
A lot of hearts coming
And
up
how.
right there. Kristen, anything you want to drill down on that? I mean, that's some good micro content for First Home IQ community.
I know. Yeah, definitely. Well, I am curious, given that, rates have risen since COVID, and that there's just I'm finding that in the consumer market, they're feeling very disheartened. And so if they do start exploring it, you said earlier that it feels confusing, so they pull back, but also they're hearing so much, negative messaging about how homeownership is out of reach for them. And there's some real affordability barriers there. So
Yeah.
how are you communicating through that? And I do think, the roommates and co-buying, that type of thing is an opportunity there, but how are you communicating through that?
Yeah, I will say the base of my client base has changed a bit because I've been in the industry long enough that it's a lot more move up conversation, which is a parallel issue. I have people saying to me all the time, I priced it out and the mortgage payment was $10,000 a month. My friend said that the other day and I was like, oh my God, like we don't have mortgage payments like that in Baltimore too often, but now we do because of rates. So I think it's all a parallel problem. And I will say, sometimes I find myself a little speechless and I actually just go with empathy and say, you've got to do what's right for you. Like one thing I tell people a lot is to not try to time the market and to just figure out when the numbers work for them. So it actually always comes back to the lender, especially if we take it back to the first time buyer question of these tenants of mine are still 10 months away from their lease expiring. And I said, I want you to talk to my lender, Danny, right now, because you need to plan ahead. We need to make sure there's no errors on your credit report. You need to know exactly how much money you're going to need and make sure it's ready. And she was like, oh, so I feel like really my job is to connect people with someone really good who will do the education and then nurture them, check in on them at like a sustainable pace, because we really have to work as a team to nurture those kind of people. It is more work, right? It's much easier to have someone come to you with all the money and ready to rock. And some agents have networks that are more naturally like that, but many of the people I speak with, that's not their community. That's not who they grew up with. It's not who they hang out with. And it's more work, but it's worth it. But I don't have magic answers, but I tell people that I try and be really honest and then give them something actionable to work towards.
I think that's so great because consumers today are also less trusting. And when they hear the empathy and honesty from you, they're going to be more attracted to doing business. I mean, they will eventually get there and they will have friends that are there and they're going to refer their business to you. So I love that.
And I will say one other thing I've loved about being in real estate is I've gotten so comfortable talking about money. And I share financial tips on my Instagram stories here and there. And I found that I think people really like reaching out to me because they know I'm someone they can say things to that they wouldn't say to anyone else, because it still can be so taboo, especially for women. So I think, we all have to find our voice and, figure out a way to position things that's not necessarily for me. Like, look at all the money I have, but just like, I did this and you can do it too. Here's how I'm using my home equity line to finance this renovation. If you were wondering, and everyone's wondering how I'm renovating this house we're moving into. So trying to break it down, because there are so many, and this is like the mission of what you guys are up to. So I'm preaching to the choir, but people just don't have this information. They don't understand. I think that's one of the things where I've thrived as a teacher is I figure out the first thing someone needs to do to get the ball rolling. And I only tell them that. And then that helps them get somewhere, and then they can really like see the results. So I think honing that skill is really valuable. And that skill might just be as simple as, this is the lender you need to speak with. Please do not procrastinate. I'm connecting you guys on a text right now. And by the way, he's going to follow up with you until you have a meeting, like whatever. That's kind of an aggressive version of it. But for people I really care about, I'm like, we're going to make this happen. This is what it's going to look like. Let's go.
What are your thoughts on, and one of the things we talk about at First Home IQ is that people that own homes have never had more equity and they've never had more resources. There's also never been more down payment resource programs. And there is a stigma that's for people that need it, when it's just leverage. And if you, qualify, you qualify, you should be educated on leverage. And then it takes a village to buy a home right now. And so we're advocating that both realtors and lenders really lean into their database about how you could help your kids get into homeownership. Because if you have a lot of move-up buyers, they either have kids that are in first-time home buyer ages, or they have kids that are moving in, and they should start planning and start educating and empowering their kids around homeownership. And so we have this thesis that, you should be leaning into your database and preparing families for homeownership. Because, the other thesis we have is that the wealth gap in America, the front line is homeownership. People that rent don't achieve financial freedom often. They have a net worth of 10,000, and people that own, I think the average is 390,000 in net worth. So part of the push we have is educating families on how to help their kids buy their homes in their 20s. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I just feel sort of a chill as you talk about it because it's so important. And I'm just lucky. I've had privilege. I've had access to things that most people don't. And that's why I was able to buy my first home at age 21. And I just feel like, yeah, I mean, it's my duty to try and help people more than I feel like my takeaway is I'm probably not doing enough to educate in this way. One of the things that's been on my heart is to maybe, and I don't remember if we said this on a separate call we had, Dave, but I've been thinking of making a first-time buyer course that I give out for free and use that as like a lead funnel. So if any lender wants to do that, that's a great idea for you. That I think there's a lot of room for that kind of education to get in front of people and teach them more.
You should absolutely do that. And at First Home IQ, Kristen, do you think we'd help her,
Yeah.
help
Like, oh my
collaborate with her to do
God.
that?
What perfect segue. Yeah. Yeah, we have lots of resources at First Home IQ to help you with creating content, from basic money management all the way through how to buy your home. So if anyone's interested in checking that out, you can find our ambassador program on our website or reach out to me. I'll put a link in
And I'll make sure I introduce you to after this. You could bring a lot of value into the community. Like we really believe that if mortgage and real estate professionals lean into beyond the transaction, bringing financial literacy to communities and to families more proactively in a more organized way, that one, we can help address a real problem in America, financial literacy crisis, and two, you could sell more homes and loan officers could do more loans if they went beyond the transaction and more proactively educated. So sounds like, that connects with you at a values level.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, let's
There's
do
more to
this. We
say,
got
but let's
18
get to
minutes.
another topic. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, let's go to give us the breakdown on your marketing mix, how you use the social, how you use a database. Deborah Bird, why don't you kind of take the lead on unpacking it, since you are, modern marketing wizard, but walk us through, like, how are you crushing it in this market? How are you winning?
Yeah, you'll see me looking to the left. I have a few notes here, so I stay on topic. The first thing I want to just briefly touch on is mindset, because I think a lot of the conversations I'm overhearing in forums are that agents are like, oh, people aren't going to pay anymore. And, so one thing that I've really thought about is that a lot of people are willing to pay for premium service. I am one of those people. I just have to find clients who want representation and not focus my energy on trying to sway people who want to DIY, a lot of people have the knowledge and resources to buy a house without an agent. They've done it before. They were in the industry years ago. They have an attorney friend. Like, I am so okay with that. And in fact, I think there's a space for my team to actually capitalize on that market and do more flat fee work. I think there's a way that could make a lot of sense. But most importantly, mindset. I don't need to sell every house in Baltimore. In fact, I need to sell a very small percentage of the homes that sell on an annual basis here to achieve my goals and for my team to achieve their financial goals. So it is completely possible to find enough people who want the premium service and want the kind of person who I describe myself to be, or their version of their kind of person. So that's not a marketing tip, but I feel like the mindset piece is huge. If you've already started to tell your stories of why it's going to be hard, and it will be hard, and there will be learning, but I think there's plenty of business and people who have those sensibilities. So to speak more specifically to the marketing, there's kind of two prongs to my strategy. Number one is to rely on what I've already established. And, I have a long track record in the business going for me. And like Dave alluded to earlier on in this meeting, I've, really honed my marketing systems. I do really strong email marketing, I'm very active on social media, specifically Instagram and Facebook, in slightly different ways. I have locked in a lot of the other parts of my marketing touch system for my team. I mean, our strategy really consists of email marketing through two different tools, HomeBot plus just like content marketing that I make myself, social media. I do 2 client events a year. I used to do way more, and I found that it didn't really bring me more business. So I've locked into 2 that are like my signature events that are well liked and people really look forward to. And then I do some unique things with gifting and loving on certain clients. I have this VIP system that I use. Basically, when someone refers, would be an actionable thing for anyone watching this. This would be I've never seen a lender do anything like this, by the way. When someone refers me, they get an automated, but personally written by me email that basically says, thank you so much, your refer. And I also thank them personally, separately, but they get this email basically saying, you are now at Beliveau Group VIP. We call it TVG VIP, so it's slightly catchy sounding. Our business runs on referrals, so please know that this is really important to us. We're going to give them really great service, and also would love to, do something a little extra to send some love your way. If you'd like to, please fill out this form. And then it sends them to a form. We use this platform called Jotform. I really like it because you can brand everything. And it asks them for all their favorites, their favorite restaurant, their favorite charity, their favorite flower. And then you can actually have Jotform integrate with certain CRMs. We use Follow Up Boss because it talks really well integration wise. So most people who refer us fill that form out, and then we send them a special gift that would be exactly what they would love, often flowers. The charitable donation means a lot to people too. And then they get a tag in our CRM, and then they get some extra, benefits being a VIP, certain special, if I do a special event or things like that. So really like articulating to people how much it matters and how important it is to us, and then reminding them that they are part of that circle. And I know I've been definitely invited to parties that lenders have where they appreciate their agents, but I feel like just being so clear, like, this is how I work. You're now in this inner circle. You have special access to me. If you ever need something, don't hesitate. I'm right here. Thank you. Like all of that. So I think just being really, really clear, that's one of the things that I put in place. So I could pause and take a breath, but those are sort of like my overarching systems that I've had going for a while, along with my Facebook group for my past clients, which is a really easy way for me to stay in touch with a group of people with only one post, but it's like really curated. It's not like a post to my, 6,000 Instagram followers. It's for, the 300 plus past clients that have decided they would like to be in an ongoing group.
Are you running any ads to generate?
Not right now. Not
Okay.
right now. I think
And then-
there's an opportunity to retarget, but that hasn't been top of the list for me.
And how are you?
Plenty of business from just the organic methods.
Weird. As long as you're consistent, right?
Yeah. And I feel like when you also really have to connect with people, because I feel like if I think about the referral I got yesterday, she was an agent referral. I didn't even work with her personally. She worked with someone on my team, but she's been a part of some of those special touches I outlined. And then she sent me the name and number of someone last night. And one of the things that was a big leap for me was, and this is very me specific, but going out of production. I don't do any client representation anymore. I'm totally behind the scenes, so I can do all the other things that I do with coaching and all of that. So it's been a leap to figure out how to build that connection with people when I never even work with them. And I found that social media is the tool for that, where I really give, I pay attention, I say thoughtful things instead of like canned things. And then I have these little systems like the VIP system, doing really 2 great parties a year instead of sort of this like big messy thing I used to do. So I feel like I've found a way to virtually build the connection and maintain close to the level of the referrals I used to get when I was active working with people directly, which was my best opportunity because people just felt instantly more easily connected. But that's been kind of my mission in the last couple of years, among a million things, like figuring out how to crack the code on doing that virtually to the best of my ability. It's totally doable.
And what else would you say for those who are newer in the business? How have you won on social the most? Like if you had to dumb it down to the top 3 activities that you would say hands down.
Okay. So I think there's 2 sides to this, depending on where you thrive. And I think a lot of agents struggle when they just don't have that big of a sphere. There's different levels to it. Some people, like I hear from a lot of agents who are like, I just moved, what do I do? And I'm always like, oh gosh, that's a tough one. You gotta build. But all that being said, I feel like there's tapping into the sphere you have and using social to do that. And that's a massive topic. The other side is building a sphere and figuring out how to crack the code on social with that. The thing that has worked the best for me is my digital farm Facebook group. And that is what has actually been my space to kind of experiment with things and innovate. So the like really short version of it is I launched a Facebook group for my like the specific suburb that I live in and serve. It's grown over time. It's over 8,000 members now. And it's actually very niche. Like if I were to do all of Baltimore, it would be a way bigger group, but something about the niche really works. That's why niches are amazing, because people are like, that's for me. I am one of those people. Like I want to be part of that group. So what I've mastered in that group is innovative lead capture and using contests, giveaways, incentives, and fun things to get people to fill out forms and opt in to giving me their contact info. And then I nurture them in HomeBot and my content driven email. And I also have a special newsletter just giving a monthly market update on that market area for the people on that list. So I started doing giveaways in that group a couple years ago. I've added probably close to 1,000 people to my database in that area, but it's not just like a bunch of random Zillow leads, which also has its place, but like they actually know me and they've been like in this space that I've been curating for a long time. So they're much warmer. It's not like the biggest numbers, but we list an extra like 3 to 7 million in volume per year from it. And it's very effortless because I've got the giveaways dialed in and people fill out a form. They check a box if they want to buy or sell a house. And then we follow up only with those. We have a pretty much 100% conversion rate on people who either enter the giveaway and are serious when they check the box, or they just end up in the system and tend to like email me, I'm ready. When can one of you come over? So it looks easy, but it's, you know, a lot of work to get there.
Because I've interviewed you, I know some of how you're going to answer this, but you're very intentional of like who you're targeting. And like, for example, I know you know, people that like dogs are going to like you, and you like people that like dogs.
Yeah.
But give us your avatar. Like, who is the ideal client that you're connecting with and you putting intention around? How would you describe that person?
Well, it's a little bit of a trope, but now that I'm a mom of young kids, that's just become like the beacon for sure. Before that, it was like dog mom, career woman. Now people see me as more of this person who's changed a lot in the last few years and became a mom and really put her business in more of a box to enjoy other parts of her life, and has wisdom to share about wealth, and is really into sharing things that benefit the community and kids. So like my brand is a lot of things. But I think at the core of it, people connect with that I am very authentic and I'm always willing to help. And I'm not an online liar. And I think that people really respond to that. So I would say that's the core of it. And then there's all my hobbies and interests that surround that. And I also am really big on inclusion and creating spaces where it's like, come join this group. I've been doing these like toddler mom meetups just totally randomly. I'm like, we're going to this park today. Does anyone want to meet us at 4 o'clock? So I think, yeah, being included is a really powerful phenomenon. And I really appreciate it when people are like, hey, this thing's been going on. Do you want to be part of it? And I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, like, thanks for thinking about me. So I think that's a huge part of what I've done, and how Facebook groups are a really effective tool to do that. It definitely takes some grit and persistence to figure it out. There were times where I wanted to throw my computer out a window, figuring out things in my group that really weren't working, like having rules to prevent like problematic posts and stuff. But I'm really glad that I worked through it all, because it's been an amazing funnel. I'm sort of like the unofficial mayor of this area. And I honestly, I'm like, sometimes when you're doing marketing stuff, you can't even imagine what's going to happen 5 or 10 years later because of these seeds you planted a long time ago. And I really think that is kind of what's happening with this group. So I started it in 2015, but I didn't start growing it really until 2021. And a lot has happened since then.
Yeah, one of the questions I was going to ask you is how you've evolved with Facebook being such a primary source of your marketing, and how much that's changed. But it sounds like you've really kept authenticity at the center of and community. So everything, you know, is that what you would say has been central to you being able to evolve with the platform?
Yes. And I feel like social media is exhausting and it's really hard to keep up with content creation. So I've definitely, I think we all just have to kind of experiment a little bit to figure out what works, but also not give up too quickly. And part of why the groups are so nice is if you're someone who maybe has my sensibilities a little bit, where you're a giver and you want to help people, but maybe you don't do well with creating trending reels or taking B-roll of yourself looking all like sassy walking through a house. Like I could do that. I just really don't want to. But in a Facebook group, I can be more like, hey, who's going to the fair this week? Like it's so basic, but it's just, I don't have to take pictures. I don't have to edit a video. I can just ask a genuine question or invite people to come along. And it's very simple. I think you can take it for granted because Facebook groups have been around for, I don't know, almost 20 years now. So you can, it's easy to forget how much you can get done in a group.
To me, that's the real secret weapon of all the social mediums is Facebook having the groups. Because there's not, like, YouTube is great. And I like that the motive when people go to YouTube is to learn. They're usually there to stay a while, but you can't really create a community as well as you can with Facebook. And I think people underestimate the value of social belonging. So the fact that you had said you like for people to feel like they're included, and it's almost like a massive group text, but you can put it on Facebook groups and really build that community. And that's the difference between having just empty followers, which I know I do a lot of discovery calls all day, every day, where people get obsessive on the vanity metrics. And I'm like, no, it's going deeper with what you have, not necessarily wider, where people just feel like another number, like an empty calorie. They want to feel like they belong to something, and social belonging is really powerful.
I don't want to add to that. That was so valuable what you said.
Thank
But
you.
I will say that like I can still get off track worrying about vanity and seeing, crappy likes and views on things. And I just have to remember one thing I've really come to recognize is like people are spying on me so hardcore and not liking or engaging with anything. And we all do that a little bit, but I've had to come to realize that the reach is a complete mystery, but it is just infinitely more than I think it is. So that's weird, but powerful.
Yeah, no, I've had that same realization, with our YouTube channel and what I do on social. The reach is, I see people at events and the amount of positive feedback I get, how well they'll cite things and everything. But I'm like, the feedback in the real world doesn't mimic the number of likes and engagement. And if you're valuable, and guys, here's my closing thought, and then I'm going to have D-Bird wrap it up. But be valuable. Like everything that you've heard from her is authentic value. She is super authentic. Every time I meet her, I'm just always surprised just how straightforward and uniquely her she is. And I've interviewed her now over 6 times, and it's the same Tina Bellevue. And then she's aggressive, she's courageous, and she cares about her community, and she cares about every customer she serves, so I would just push everybody to do a little reflection around that. Before we give it to Deborah to close it out, Krista, did you have any closing thoughts or anything you want to make sure to get said?
Not really, other than I really wish you were my realtor and that you were in my market. So thank you so much for sharing today. This has been so valuable.
Thank you. Can I just say I forgot to show something for 1 minute that could be
Bring it. Yes.
Okay.
You get
So
a
I'm going to
closing
share my
thought.
screen. This is maybe the value bomb if you just don't know what else to do to support your agents. I
The
noticed that
value bomb. Let's go.
I mean, I'm setting the bar high. You guys can tell me what you think. But my amazing admin noticed that a school fridge magnet calendar was going viral in a mom's group, and she screenshot and sent it to me and was like, we should do this. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's such a good idea. Cause like, I've never resonated with sports calendars because I'm just not like following those sports. So anyway, made this calendar. My clients are freaking out for it. They're so pumped. And then, I researched where to get the best price on the magnets and how to ship it without having to stuff the envelopes myself. And then I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to waste if I don't share it with agents and loan officers. So we made this in Canva and I templated it. And if you fill out this landing page, you get the template and also my pro tips on how to use it as a lead magnet. And that's kind of a double entendre. I didn't even mean it that way, but there's so many different ways to use this. Like you could use it to go viral in a mom's group or whatever, where posts are allowed and capture new people. I'm doing both. I'm posting it in groups where I haven't gotten contact info yet. And I'm also letting my clients request it. So I'm only sending it to people who want it, not like, people who don't need it. And it's been super, super popular. So I can share this link somewhere, chat box or wherever you say.
We'll put a link to it in chat. And we will also put a link to this, if you're watching this on YouTube, in show notes, there'll be a link. And Tina and I have been talking offline. She's got some really cool training that she's doing for realtors that I want to make sure everybody knows about. She's thinking about tailoring some of it for mortgage professionals, which I can tell you I'm going to be pushing her to do. And I'll be introducing you to Kristen. We can't wait to have you as a first Home IQ ambassador in your marketplace. And Deborah Bird, close it out.
So the first action item is, if we were interviewing your agent for the LOs on this call, I would hope that your agent wouldn't say that that would be the first time that they've seen a Mortgage Coach TCA of the 5 different ways an agent can get paid and how a lender can help with that. So one, ask yourself, would your agent say that they've seen it or not, and how well do they understand it? And then number 2, allow that to be your secret weapon, where it gets you in the DMs, in the emails. Tina's one that said she doesn't answer the phone quite often. So obviously with Tina, it would not be calling her, but look for something specific. Facebook, stalk them, use social media, and lead with connection and be authentic. I love the magnet. As a mom of 4 that will soon have kids in every single high school, middle school, elementary school, and even a 9th grade center. It is beyond chaotic trying to keep up with their schedule. So something as simple yet innovative as a refrigerator magnet is huge. And these are the types of things that as mortgage professionals, you can take these nuggets, take Tina's courses, learn how to get in the mess with agents and simplify and make it easy so they can go out and do what they do best. And then you can help empower and encourage the buyer to be excited to start building their own wealth, even if that means buying with a roommate or house hacking or buying a duplex, whatever it may be. Let's get them excited, but lead with education and keep it simple.
All right. I put a link to that magnet in chat. So click on it real quick before we close out. You got about 30 seconds. If everyone who's watching this has not already subscribed to the YouTube channel, Mortgage Coach YouTube, subscribe so that as we add more video, you get alerted and you know about what's happening in this awesome community. If you're not following Savage Insights, that's where whatever the next interview I'm doing is at the top of savageinsights.com. There's also a mobile club. I think it's like three or 4 links down. Check it out. And it's been a great call. So thank you so much, Tina. Can't wait for the next time we talk. I'll definitely let you know when I'm in the area. And Kristen, thanks for coming in and filling in for Todd. And you're always invited here. So anytime.
Great to
Thank
meet
you
you,
all
Tina.
so much.
All right. This is a wrap. Take care, everybody.